All right, everybody, welcome to Environmental Science Part B. We're going to get started here with the second semester, going over some information on the project on fossil fuels. But before we do that, I want to take a few minutes and just go over um, some information, some important information in the lesson, and then how that is going to relate to your project. So let's first talk a little bit about what the objectives of the lesson are and how they relate to the project. The lesson was pretty in depth, comprehensive, talked a lot about all of the fossil fuels that we're gonna hit on here and how they're gonna relate to your project. But hopefully, after you've gone through the lesson, you understand the processes that help form oil and natural gas. You'll be able to compare and contrast oil and natural gas in terms of supply and its environmental impact. And this is really a hot topic issue right now. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Talk about the global areas of major oil production, define oil sands and know some of the advantages and disadvantages of their use, and then, of course, describe the controversy concerning oil exploration in ANWR, or the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, because that's another really big hot button issue right now that is making national news. So let's let's talk a little bit about um, oil supply. Okay, so when we talk about oil supplies, about 1/3 of our world's energy and its demand is really continually to increase. Okay, um, and really how long we have on our dependence on fossil fuels, particularly on oil, we really don't know. Okay, we have some research that suggests that we can keep up, with demand, because we'll continue to discover new oil deposits, and we'll continue to have new drilling technologies that'll gain us access to more oil. But then there's other research that suggests that for every new barrel that we discover, we consume, and when I say we, I'm talking a global perspective. We consume 3 to 4 barrels. Okay, so really, our use is high as compared to what is being put out. So we need to be global stewards. We need to continue to think about global stewardship, and remember that these resources are non-renewable resources, which means when they're done, they're done. Okay, so keep that in mind as you go through, particularly the second half of this course, which focuses a lot on renewable and non-renewable resources. But when we talk about oil, okay, and we talk about oil reserves, okay, your chapter really goes in detail, and gives some really nice statistics um, on crude oil, how it was formed, and the results of oil extraction. Okay, and I'm gonna put up a video here at some point in the next day or so that actually goes over a little bit about this, um, and talks about OPEC, and that OPEC is the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. Okay, so that's a name you want to be familiar with. And one of the things that you really should be particularly cognizant of is offshore oil drilling. Okay, um, and even onshore oil drilling up in ANWR, the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. Okay, which is believed to contain, what could be believed is the world's largest supply of crude oil, next to the Middle East. Okay, and there's a lot of controversy going on there because it's a national wildlife refuge. Um, are we going to subject something that is considered protected um, for years to be allowed to have government or non-government oversight for oil drilling by private companies? So a real hot button issue in politics and government right now. If you're following the presidential debate, as we're coming into an election year, this is going to be a big issue about drilling, especially with the Keystone XL pipeline. That's gonna play a role in all of this. And in Pennsylvania alone, um, if you know anybody that lives up in north and north central Pennsylvania, um, the gas companies are always looking for lands for individuals that live in those areas to start drilling in the Marcellus Shale. So again, these issues are going to be issues that you might be able to look at as a student and say, they don't really impact me. But as you get older and as you become independent adults, these are going to be issues that are going to play a role in your lives. Okay, gas prices are driven by world oil production. Okay, if you want to own a car, you're going to have to worry about the price of gas, heating your home with natural gas. Okay, whether it be petroleum I'm sorry, propane or natural gas. Okay, those things are driven by economies, and those economies really are driven by private corporations. So you need to be mindful of those. So with that, enough about that. Let's talk about the project. Okay. Because this is really what the crux of the lesson wants you to focus on. So, the directions state that really in 2 or more sentences, um, you want to describe the impact of fossil fuel combustion on the global carbon cycle. Talk a little bit about why predicting our future oil supply is controversial. State at least one reason for or against both offshore drilling or drilling in ANWR. Compose a complete paragraph. Describe how oil and natural gas compare in terms of predicted supply and carbon emissions. And what it says is your responses to questions should be at least 350 words. Okay, so I'm not going to sit here and I'm not going to count words, but what I'm really looking for are your responses, okay, to those 4 questions, and can you hit the main hot button points, in about a paragraph for each question. So we're talking, 3 to 4 to 5 sentences for each question, for each of those 4 questions. All right. So for the first question, it asks, describe the impact of fossil fuel combustion on the global carbon cycle. So what you're going to talk about here is the role, okay, of burning fossil fuels and how that relates to the addition of carbon dioxide and hydrocarbons into the atmosphere. Okay, what are the impacts, and what are the long-term effects of that? So that's what that question is looking for. Okay, in the second question, explain why predicting our future oil supply is controversial and involves some uncertainty. Okay, you need to really think about the global economy as it relates to actual oil production, physical oil production. Okay, so that's what you're going to be focusing on and targeting in that question. In the third question, state at least one reason for and one reason against both offshore drilling or drilling for oil in ANWR. Okay, so you're going to give me a pro and a con for drilling offshore, okay, and a pro and a con for drilling onshore up in ANWR. All right. And then for the last question, describe in one paragraph how oil and natural gas compare in terms of predicted supply and carbon dioxide emissions. So again, what we're looking at here is you're going to have to go back, you're going to have to look at some statistics and talk about the role or the amount of natural gas's supply as it relates to the supply of oil, okay, and how both of those play a role in carbon dioxide production, okay, and in hydrocarbon production. Okay, so your answers should be complete. They should be concise. They should be about 4 to 5 sentences each. Okay, where appropriate. Make sure you're proofreading for spelling, grammar, and punctuation. And like I said, make sure that you're clear and concise in how you're articulating your answers. Okay, put some real thought into this because this is really going to be an important project going forward. Okay, you can attach those answers in a Word document, or you can put it in the question box down below. It's up to you. If you get stuck, please seek me out in the virtual office. I'll be more than happy to help you. And we'll be back here next week going over a brand new project. So, with that, have a great week, and we'll see you next week, everybody.